So a few weeks ago I made a terrarium in this little glass vase, jar, bowl, whatever you want to call it. And it was a really fun project to make. I also included a little waterfall with a USB pump. And this whole terrarium is doing really good without any maintenance really. I don't really have to do anything to it. The light's on the timer, the pump is on the timer, and it just runs by itself. So I really enjoyed making this thing, and today we're going to do another one. I wanted to make sure that I don't end up creating something that looks exactly the same as the other vase. So I decided to do something completely different and do something that I've never done before. And I'm going to give this vase or this terrarium a theme. I was always very inspired by those Lost World kind of aquascape themes. So I decided to do something like that. And I've got myself a statue. So we're going to use this statue as the theme for this little terrarium. And yeah, I'm super excited about it. Okay, so I've gathered some supplies so we can get started. So of course we have the bottle itself. This is from a brand called Bioloark, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but I'll leave a link in the video description. Really nice glass bottle, has a lid on top with an LED light inside and these sort of like air vents that you can close as well. Really cool. Works with a USB plug. So just a simple USB and has a simple on and off switch as well. So I've also bought a USB charger for that. And I'm again going to use a USB pump as well. So I'm going to include that. Then I have a piece of wood. I have the statue and a couple rocks. A little piece of foam for the to protect the USB pump. I think that's enough to get us started. Of course we'll use a few other things, plants as well, but I'll show you what I have for that later. Okay, so the first step is to get started on our pump. I'm not going to go for a waterfall again, but I want to include a water feature. So I was thinking to have the statue in the back of the vase and like in front of the statue create almost like a mini lake, you know. So my inspiration is that you're walking through the jungle and then you end up at this lake. Across the lake is this statue that's covered in plants and roots and moss, something like that. I think that's going to look pretty cool. So first step is to cut out a little section of this foam pad and then we can put the pump in there and then it's protected and then no debris can get inside the pump and potentially damage it. So let's do that first. Okay, so I've just cut out a little section in this foam pad. I've also made a little hole on this side, so we can now fit in the pump, just like so. So now it's well protected. And then over here, I'm actually going to add a little elbow with a piece of tubing. So now I can sit the pump on the bottom of the vase like so and have the flow coming upwards. So I was thinking it would be cool to have some water flowing around and on top of the statue. So there's basically two gaps here on the side of his arms. And there's also a gap here on top of his head. So that's where we can put some tubing and have some water flowing from. So we need to separate the flow from the one pump and separate it into 3 sections. So I think I have a solution for that. I've got this little filter attachment, it's basically like a spray bar, and I can attach this to the pump. Then to the spray bar I can attach some tubing, just like so. And this we can direct to wherever we want, so we can have multiple points of water flow basically. So I think that should work. I'm gonna give it a go. Okay, so that's the pump basically done. We still need to attach the tubing, but we can do that later once the statue is inside the vase. I think the next step is to secure this in the vase. So I'm going to apply some hot glue to the bottom of this sponge and then place the filter all the way in the back of the vase and then we can continue. So the filter is now inside the vase, so now we can kind of do a rough mock-up of the idea that I had, put all the pieces inside the vase, see if it works, and if it doesn't work we can make some adjustments. Here we go, that's sort of the rough idea that I had in mind. So the statue in the center, surrounded by some pieces of wood, some rocks in front. Well, the rocks will mostly be covered by substrate and hopefully in the center we can create a little bit of a mini pond. Yeah, that big piece of wood kind of covers most of the pump and that attachment. Now I just need to find a way to get those airline tubings on that attachment and onto the statue. So that's going to be the next challenge. Okay, I managed to get all 3 tubes through there. So there's one on top over there and 2 at his arms. Still need to cut them to the correct size, but I think now is a good time to fill up with water and just do a little test run. See if everything works properly, see if the water flow is okay, or if you still need to make some adjustments. Okay, we're making good progress. I think the hardscape is now more or less done. Sort of the main structure is done. Of course, there's still going to be loads of details in there. I've added some white filter floss on the bottom here, and that's to prevent the substrate from mixing. I'm going to have some sand in the center and some plant substrate on the outside. So I want to make sure that those two things are not going to mix. Then the statue is now glued to the 2 pieces of wood. And the tubing is also glued to the backside of the statue, so everything is firmly in place. Now, because I've glued everything together, it does mean that if for whatever reason the pump would decide to break, I'll be pretty screwed and there's no real way of fixing it without tearing down this entire layout. But I just want to make sure that everything is securely in place, you know, and if the pump would break, I don't mind. Then I just have a good excuse to make a new terrarium again. So the next step is to start filling in all the cracks between the statue, between the wood, between the rocks, with this stuff right here. This is called sphagnum moss. It's basically just dry moss that's very good at holding moisture. I did the same thing on this terrarium. So basically underneath all the moss that you see in here, there's a layer of that sphagnum moss, and it's just a really good growing media for plants. So I'm going to do the same thing on this new terrarium. Okay, there's the sphagnum moss in. Still doesn't really look like much, but once we start adding the plants and adding in small details, I think things will really come together. Next step is the plant substrate, and for that I'm going to use Aquasoil. Now, Aquasoil is not commonly used in these terrarium setups, but it's what I have available, and it's what I used in the first terrarium as well. It's working very well there, so why change the winning game? I'm going to use a little bit in the foreground here, and that's it. Okay, so it's actually been a few days, but I finally found some time to continue with this project. So we're now ready for the most exciting part, at least to me it's the most exciting part, planting. So I basically just got a bunch of leftovers from other projects. I have some different types of moss, I have a few crypts, some Monte Carlo, just a few random plants basically, but I think they will work well in this little setup. So I've got some really nice moss. This is Vesicularia species. It's like a little mat, actually got, well, basically 2 mats. So we can tear this into little pieces, and I think I'm going to place it on top of the plant substrate. Yeah, that moss immediately takes things to the next level. And now I want to take a little bit of this Monte Carlo and actually apply it to the white filter floss that we still have visible underneath the statue. So I'm just going to add a little bit of like super glue, just a gel type super glue, in a few small points, and hopefully that way it will kind of stick to that filter floss. Oh, I love how that looks. The moss in the foreground looks super natural, and then the Monte Carlo, yeah, I like it. Next I want to move to some crypts. Here I have some Crypt affinis. I'm hoping that I can squeeze it in the little corner over there, just next to that piece of wood. Next up I have some really small crypts. This is the Crypt parva. I want to see if I can add it in the foreground here, just kind of break up the moss a little bit, just to make it a little bit more mixed and natural. Then I have another super tiny crypt. This is the Crypt lutea hobbit. See if I can still manage to find some spots in the foreground as well. Okay, we're making good progress. I like the bottom section, but I do think it's a little bit too cutesy, too like natural, but not really like jungle and wild, you know? So we need to fix that, but we can get to that later. I first want to move on to the top section, so the statue and the wood. For that I have some of this Amblystegium moss. It's a very delicate moss, but I quite like it. And I think if we use this, we can kind of cover up the statue a little bit, cover the wood a little bit, and make it look like it's been there for ages, you know, and this moss has just grown on top of the structure. Okay, in terms of planting, I think we're almost there. Quite like how that looks, especially in a few weeks once that moss really starts growing, it's going to look very natural. Right now it still looks a little bit odd, but give it a little bit of time. Next up, I want to move on to our water feature. I want to add a little bit of sand on the bottom there, see how that looks, and also start a filter, and then yeah, I'm really excited about that actually. Okay, so the water feature is working, not really as well as I'd hoped, but maybe in time that will increase. Right now we can see some water flowing from the left side of the statue, and that's what I wanted, so that's good. Now I'm really happy with how things are developing. I just think it looks a little bit too, like I said earlier, too cute, too, yeah, I don't know, everything is very vibrant and green, and it doesn't really have that like wild look that I was kind of going for. But I think we can change that with some of this stuff. I have some of these yeah, little tiny branches. Also this stuff, I don't even know what it's called, but it kind of, I think if we add a little bit more details with this stuff, I think that will make things better. So 2 weeks have passed since I've planted this terrarium. It's doing really well. Adding in those tiny branches and twigs definitely helped to give it a bit more of a jungle vibe. I think in a few more weeks, when the moss is really starting to take over, it will look even better. Setting up these 2 terrariums has been a fun little challenge and a bit different from what I usually do. Even though I still prefer making a nice aquascape, setting up a little terrarium like this is a nice way to change things up every now and then. They also don't take up as much space and require a lot less maintenance. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, then don't forget to hit that like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.